Hello, hello. I am Glenn Wilson, President and CEO of Communities First Inc. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so excited to bring to you our second series of Community Candor for 2021. And the name of this series is Go Mad, which is Go Make a Difference. And I guess I'll dedicate that to my old college football coach in Northwood, Coach Pat Reapportionment, passed away a few years ago. But he used to always tell us when we hit the football field to go make a difference, not only just in the lives of your teammates, but in the lives of, and the people around you. So definitely just wanted to make sure I brought that up. So for any T-Wolf people out there that's watching this, any of my old college football buddies. However, let's get to the point here today that we're talking about is a redistricting town hall meeting. That's going to be real exciting with some of the speakers that we have here together today. That's going to bring you a whole bunch of information that's going to empower you. Communities First is a community nonprofit community development organization located in the city of Flint. However, we operate across the state of Michigan and in Indiana. So we're always looking for ways to bring the community high quality content, things that's actually going to help them or help you each and every day to move us all along to make a change in our community. So our motto is empowering people and build community. And how do you empower people? That's by getting them information from the right sources and then empowering them and then giving them the tools necessary to affect change each and every day. I am going to make sure that I pass this off to my wonderful co-founder, Essence Wilson, which is going to be the moderator today of this wonderful conversation. Please take a few minutes today while this is just getting started. Do not pass the moment to empower other people by just taking the power that you have right now on your cell phone, your computer. Share this on YouTube. You can share it on LinkedIn, Facebook, and all your social media platforms. So please just take a second, share it, ask people to tune in. If you can't tune in today, it will be replayed and it will be available on our YouTube channel at Communities First Inc. So thank you so much. Essence, have a wonderful time, and I'm looking forward to this powerful conversation.
Thank you, Glenn, for that warm introduction and warm welcome. I am Essence Wilson, and I am co-founder and chief strategy officer here at Communities First. It is a pleasure to bring this wonderful panel of individuals to you to talk about something that we all should know about, and that's redistricting. So Communities First got involved in this effort on the heels of being involved with census work, being involved with helping people know and understand their rights regarding voting. And we thought, it's a natural bridge to start talking about redistricting. And you'll understand why in just a few minutes. So the first thing I would like to have us do is just go around and do quick introductions. And we can just start in the order that you appear on the screen. And just take a minute, tell us who you are and what your role is today.
I guess I'm first on the list. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Richard Weiss. I'm one of the Independent Commission's commissioners. We've been doing this since October, so we've been pretty busy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and I'm the project coordinator at Communities First. I have an architectural background with undergraduate focus in sustainability and a graduate focus in healthy cities from the University of Michigan. And I'm here today to talk about maps and why they are important.
And hi, I'm Dan Kildee. I am the member of Congress representing the 5th Congressional District of Michigan. I'm here in my Washington office right now. My district includes Flint, Saginaw, Bay City, but also lots of other small places from Fenton at the south and Oscoda at the north end of my district up along the Lake Huron shoreline. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Zatella. I am one of the commissioners on the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, and I am an attorney by profession.
Hi, I'm Jim Ananek. I'm a Senate Minority Leader in the Michigan Senate, and I live in Flint and represent Flint and parts of Genesee County. And it's really good to be here and look forward to the conversation.
And hi, everyone. Mariana Martinez. I'm the Director of Civic Engagement Initiatives at Michigan Nonprofit Association, or MNA.
And I want to give a special thank you to MNA for engaging us in this work and for partnering with us. They provided a great deal of resources and tools for us, as well as some funding to support the effort. So thank you very much, Mariana, for being with us. And thank you to everyone for joining us and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insights with those that are watching. So we're going to start today with Mariana, and she has a presentation for us that tells us pretty much why are we here, what is redistricting, why is it important. There's a term that you may or may not have heard called communities of interest, so she'll cover that. And then also she'll share MNA's role around the census and redistricting.
Thank you, Essence. I believe everybody can see my presentation. If you are able to share that, be helpful. Thank you. And I will apologize behind me. I'm moving, so I was told not to say it, but I feel compelled to say that. So again, thank you so much for the invitation to talk about something so important as redistricting is. So today I'll let you know a little bit about what redistricting is. And I know commissioners are going to be covering some of that, so I'll probably skip those slides a little bit faster. So again, for those who don't know MNA, we are a statewide membership organization dedicated to serving the diverse nonprofit sector through advocacy, training, and resources. And so we got involved now. We are mobilizing nonprofits essentially to transparently achieve fair and impartial district maps for Michigan, but specifically to promote racial equity, so that communities of color have a voice and are not locked out of important decision making that happens at the local, state, and federal levels. But before I tell you what our role is and what we're doing and how we're doing it, I wanted to tell you a little bit of what redistricting is. You're going to hear this a lot this year. Redistricting is a process of redrawing district boundaries. We call it redistricting because we reassign or redo the redistricting process, or rather the districting process. After 10 years, people move, babies are born, people unfortunately die, the population changes in general, and therefore districts change. And so as you can see in this image, there's different population, and we reset that process, and then we start again for the next 10 years with the same amount of population for districts. Now, why is redistricting important now? Like the census, redistricting happens only every 10 years. We know with the census, if we undercount people, states, and essentially our communities lose funding and resources. So similarly with the redistricting process, it is a unique opportunity to make our voices heard and say what's important in our communities. All of this to ensure that our communities either stay together or don't get split apart, because lines will be drawn for the next 10 years. As you could see in this image, if communities get split, for example, communities end up underrepresented and underserved. We know already this is the case with a lot of communities of color, immigrant communities, and low-income populations. Now, let's talk about why redistricting sometimes could be controversial, right? In many states, the redistricting process has been manipulated and controlled by political parties, a term that you have, I'm sure, heard and commonly known as gerrymandering. The two most common types of gerrymandering are partisan and racial. And we know, unfortunately, that gerrymandering hurts most notably our communities of color. But the great news is that in 2018, Michigan voters did something amazing, which is putting an end to political gerrymandering. Now, voters, as you're going to hear later on a little bit today, amended the Michigan Constitution to make citizens, not politicians, draw district lines. We changed it so that we now have an independent redistricting citizens commission, and gerrymandering is not illegal per se, but it's very difficult to do because the process is now transparent. Now, who is the independent citizens redistricting commission? It's essentially a bipartisan and nonpartisan commission responsible for drawing the district lines. They were randomly selected Michigan voters, and you're going to see some of them, or you're going to meet some of them. And they basically are charged to carry out open, transparent public process. They follow a very strict criteria for map redrawing, and they also use the data from the U.S. Census to do that. Now, the commission is composed by 13 people total. 4 people who affiliate with the Democratic Party, 4 with the Republican Party, and 5 who do not affiliate with either major political party. Now, the commission must follow an important criteria, and you're going to hear this a lot. Amongst the top 3, there's communities of interest. And so you're going to hear that term definitely a lot. But what is a community of interest? A community of interest is essentially a group of individuals who share common bonds or values like economic, ethnic, cultural, historical, you name it. You are certainly part of a community of interest. We all are. Now, a question that can help us understand what a community of interest might be, is there a relatively common sense of belonging in your community? What common beliefs or values exist in your community? And ultimately, what would you like your representatives to advocate for in your community? Think of Mexican Town, for example, or Dearborn's Middle Eastern community. They have a historic interest in a lot of history, or ESL education, or religious groups, you name it. The definitions can be vast and can be reflected amongst all the populations living in our diverse state that is Michigan. Now, let me tell you about how we're doing this and about our initiative. With equity, and inclusivity at the forefront, the main goal of our initiative is to reach populations that have been historically underrepresented and underserved. And that is to provide them with the necessary resources and tools so that everyone participates in the process. Now, for the purposes of our initiative, communities of interest are communities of color, immigrant communities, and low-income communities. So these are the communities that we're trying to reach. And how are we doing that? We're working with a cohort of 20 nonprofit organizations, and we're working with one tonight. And these nonprofit organizations represent a variety of populations like the African American, the Latino and Hispanic population, Arab American, Asian American, Pacific Islanders, the Bangla community, for example, the Caribbean. We know there's a big population in Detroit. The African community, there's a big population in Detroit as well as Grand Rapids. People with disabilities, as well as LGBTQ communities, who are communities who are often also left out and have been disenfranchised throughout time. Now, our cohort is located in 3 different cities because it's where most of these populations live. So we are in Detroit, Flint, and Grand Rapids. And how are we doing this? We're providing them with the necessary resources and tools, education, webinars, trainings, etc., so that they themselves can disseminate that information onto their communities. We're also providing them with a communications toolkit so that they can help send the message or disseminate the message, providing them with technical support around the dissemination and the communication strategy. And something that's very important is we're also providing with all of these communications, the translation. If it's not, it's already difficult to understand or to explain rather what redistricting is. It doesn't resonate as census, for example, is. And so it was quintessential for us to ensure that we are translating it so people hear it in their native language. We're also providing updates, what's happening with the commission. I feel like I see them for every meeting. So every important decision, we give them an update so that everybody knows what is happening with the commission. Now, here is our cohort. As you can see, Communities First is part of them. If you're interested, of course, in getting involved in this initiative, you can visit our website and contact one of our cohort members. Now, how can your community take action, right? This is a historic opportunity for citizen participation in the electoral process. We know that how maps are drawn will decide which candidate you can vote for. And so we need our elected officials to represent the issues that we care. For example, Detroit has high levels of pollution. We have one of the highest polluted zip codes in the United States. And so to ensure that these issues are being represented, it's extremely, extremely important. Your involvement is critical. The commission is going to be offering different town halls. So they have 10, they're offering more than 10. And then they're going to get input from the community. And it's very important to tell them what's important in your community. What is a community of interest in your community? And then once they're going to take this input and they're going to draw the maps, and they're going to offer more public hearings to hear from the community. And so these opportunities are crucial to get involved. Now, the public hearing dates are here, but I'm sure the commission will reiterate that. In Detroit, Flint, and Grand Rapids, these are coming up, so I highly encourage you to participate. So there are many ways to participate. You can contact them. You can visit their website. You can visit our website. You can provide public comment. You can provide written materials or maps, draw a map and share it with them. Tell them what's important in your community. But also sign up on their social media or our social media to know like what is happening. So help us spread the word. Go to our website. All of our materials are there. Translated materials are there as well. If you want to share, let us know, or let you know how we can help in disseminating that message. Because remember, we will be invisible if we don't show up. So this is a crucial time to do that. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, this is my email, and we'll be happy to provide with more information.
Thank you, Mariana, for sharing that information and giving us a good baseline and giving us context about what redistricting is, but then also some really simple, easy, straightforward ways to get involved. I just want to say thank you again to M&A for engaging so many different population groups in this effort and trying to get the word out. I think sometimes when we're talking about something that seems complex like redistricting, it seems like something that your average everyday person shouldn't or wouldn't connect with. So I also want to say, thank you to the voters of Michigan for putting this back in the hands of the public, right? So that we can try and avoid gerrymandering. And if you don't know what gerrymandering is, you'll find out a little bit later in the presentation. So with that, I would like to turn things over to Senator Jim Ananek. And if you could give us a little bit of context and history of redistricting in Michigan and how the commission came about, and then anything else that you would like to share that's relevant.
Yeah, thank you, Essence, and thank you everybody again for being on. It's really great to have two commissioners because, and I want to just thank you for your service. It's really an important role. Civic engagement from our citizens is critical, and this is probably one of the most important things people can do over this next, for the next 10 years. Your work is going to be really critical. So the history of Michigan redistricting process, us, like most states, up until 2018, sort of haggled at the legislative level and tried to, and I'm going to use terms that I'm not putting value on, I'm just giving facts, cut deals for, I want my district to have this community in it. I'll vote for this map if you cut this neighborhood out. That was kind of how it was done, and I'm oversimplifying, but for my lifetime, Democrats have not drawn maps in Michigan. It was either Republicans or it was done by the courts. That means that the maps could not be agreed upon. They had to go to the courts, or the Republicans controlled the legislature and the governor's office. So I think in leading up to 2016, 2017, and then 2018, there's actually a pretty interesting movie called Slay the Dragon that some folks should watch. It kind of highlights some of the history of, it really was a citizen-driven initiative. It was not the Democratic Party, it was not the Republican Party, it was not any special interests. It was literally just citizens saying, I think I want our maps to be drawn by citizens. I think it should be more accountable. If in Michigan, we have a number of districts that are heavily Democratic and a number of districts that are heavily Republican, and then a handful of districts that would be arguably called competitive, that Democrats or Republicans can compete in and argue their ideas and their beliefs, and then go out and hope that citizens elect you. So many districts are won or lost in the primary, meaning in August, when we go out and vote only in our Democratic primary or only vote in our Republican primary. And I think generally what the founding fathers and what people in the voters across this country, but in particular here in Michigan, want is to have a much more accountable system where people are held, their views are held accountable in November, not just in August. So a number of people came together in leading up to the 2018 election, organized both virtually and in person, and went out and knocked on doors and got petitions signed by hundreds of thousands of people and put it on the ballot And then in 2018, proposal, I believe it was proposal 2. Sometimes they get mixed up. Yeah, proposal 2 was the independent citizens redistricting process. Now we have a number of states now have independent redistricting commissions. Still not as many as there needs to be, but that means that a process was determined, that's put in the Constitution, that says that every 10 years there'll be people apply, and as was mentioned, the breakdown of Democrat, Republican, Independent. That process has happened. Those folks are now seated, and they've been having meetings, and they'll be looking at data and hearing from folks that are from the community about why their community needs representation, why it should go with this community or it shouldn't, and all sorts of things like that. And then when they're finished and they provide their map, when the commission finishes work, then next year when representatives and senators are running, they will run on a map determined by their voters. Versus politicians deciding who their voters are, the voters will decide who the politicians have to run and try to represent. I think it's going to be really exciting, both at the federal level, but also where I represent the state level, because we'll actually have to be accountable to the voters that are not just our primary voters, but our general voters as well.
Thank you for that. I think that's really helpful to know and to think about the kind of the switch. Instead of politicians deciding on who their voters are going to be, they're really going to have to work hard to appeal to the folks that live in the areas that are based on how the lines are drawn. So I think that switch is going to be really really interesting. So it should be. Well, I guess we'll see how it goes, right? And I think it'll go well, but it'll definitely be a shift from what we're used to. So now we're going to hear from Congressman Dan Kildee, who's going to just reiterate for us why redistricting is important, maybe touch a little bit about the census and the census results, and then just anything that you can share to encourage people to actively participate in the process.
Well, great. I'm happy to do that. So thank you, Essence, for inviting me to be a part of this. And to you and Glenn, thank you for everything you do, not just doing this, but for the community. As has been said, every 10 years after the national census is completed, states around the country redraw their political maps, congressional districts, legislative districts that we'll have then for the next decade. At the federal level, it's obviously a little bit different in the sense that the census data first is used to decide how the 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are divided among the 50 states. In the Senate, it's easy. There's 2 senators for every state. For us, we have to do an apportionment based on population. And that's what it's called, apportionment. There's redistricting that this commission works on. The apportionment of seats between the states will be done based on the data. And so while the Census Bureau data hasn't been released for 2020 yet, and the apportionment information is not out yet, all the estimates that I've seen, and I think that everyone's assuming will be the case, will show that Michigan will lose a seat in Congress, going from the 14 that we currently have to 13 seats after the 2022 election is settled. And that's what the Redistricting Commission will have on its agenda, to determine how to take 14 seats and then turn them into more fairly drawn 13 seats. Our population has grown in Michigan over the last decade, but other states experience more significant population growth over each of the last 4 cycles of redistricting, including this one. So if we lose another one, that's half a century of us continually losing against the other states in the country, and that's why we continue to lose seats. So as others have said, typically this would have been done by the state legislature. Obviously, the decision that was made by the voters to vest this responsibility in the hands of citizens, I think, is a good decision. And I'm particularly grateful that there are so many citizens, including 2 that are joining us tonight, that have been willing to step up and take on this really important responsibility. The good news is the way the commission is working is to seek public input, which is really important, to hold public hearings. There will be one in June. I think it's the 1st of June. in Flint, where I grew up, my hometown. The commission will then hold whatever additional public hearings it needs on the proposed districts that they draw. So all of this input, including the opportunity to ask questions at this town hall, are really important. We all have an important role because the districting commission has to consider the communities of interest, and there's much discussion about that. Our state constitution describes that as groups that share cultural or historic characteristics or economic interests. So if you feel you are a part of the mid-Michigan community, for example, living in our area, you have an opportunity to make your voice heard, to determine what sorts of communities of interest you think ought to be protected. And so I just encourage everyone who has an opinion on this to speak up and to have their voice heard, because I think the commission, from what I've seen, is willing to listen to the people that that will have an opinion on this state. They have an important role, but your voices could be important. I think it's also important to keep in mind that this whole idea is to bring greater fairness, inclusion to the political process. And I hope that that continues to be the case, not just as it relates to this, but as we know, there's effort to impact how people can vote in this country. So the redistricting piece of it is really important to make sure that the districts are fair. But we also, I think, have an obligation, and this is just my own editorializing, to make sure that that people have access to the ballot and they can vote. I strongly supported legislation here in Washington, the For the People Act, H.R. 1, that improves access to voting through registration, for absentee voting, expanded early voting. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act, named for my very dear friend who we lost last year, would restore some of the key provisions in the Voting Rights Act, which has to be adhered to by the commission. So whether it's fair redistricting or legislation to protect the right to vote, I'm really supportive of efforts to make sure there's fair representation and fair access to the ballot. So thanks for doing this. Again, to the commissioners, thanks for your service to our state. And to Glenn and Essence, thanks for including me in this.
Thank you. We appreciate your participation and your comments. And I hope that people really take that to heart, that there is a desire by so many people for fairness and equity, and it requires us to be involved in the process as citizens. And if we're not engaged and we're not involved, then we're sending a counter message to that of many, many people who are in positions of influence and authority. So we need to do our part. And getting involved with this, watching this, sharing this is a good start for sure. Next up on our agenda, we are going to hear from Andrea, who is our project coordinator here at Communities First, and she's going to share some information about maps. So, a big part of this redistricting effort has to do with how the lines are drawn in maps. And so we just want to give a really high-level introduction to maps, why they are important, and how they are going to be used in this process. So we are going to add that on. Go ahead, Andrea.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and thank you, Essence, for the introduction. I am the project coordinator at Communities First. So I have 2 degrees from the University of Michigan with a focus on sustainability and healthy cities. So why are maps important? What can they tell us? And we often associate maps with something that is fixed. It is usually presented to us as a fact. We are receiving this information, typically to navigate or in some cases, analyze its parts. But what if I say these maps are constantly changing and they only say part of the story? So I hope that today I can humanize the map making process for you by sharing a social science perspective of what maps are and why they are important. So as an architectural designer, I love brainstorming projects, but if someone gives me an address for their lot, I can't begin without looking at the bigger picture. And so the site isn't isolated by itself in its own little world. It's often part of a larger network of parts, in this case, a series of lot parcels stitched together in Detroit, and that will no doubt have an influence in the surrounding Eastern market where this project was located, and they're codependent. It's important to know its story before we begin to impact its future. So a better way to show you how a city can be described as a series of parts and systems is to look at this over 100-year-old plan of Chicago. And the co-author of these maps, architect Daniel Burnham, described Chicago as a living organism with arterial streets. And as you can see in these maps, it kind of does look like a human body arteries. And the city is alive as we see its occupants. As its occupants, we kind of act like neurons, and we activate places as we travel from one point to another. But instead of showing a map of what could be, some maps gives us more of a historical background of what is or once was. So this map shows us how different types of streets in Ahmedabad, India, where one of my projects was in my grad program, was organically formed over time. And so the layering of information is important because the imagery of data couldn't be found by looking through census data or asking Google. The data just isn't there, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we have to go through archival records, talk to people, partner with local institutions, and seek other ways to map the story. So in this city, the streets were planned carefully with access to water in mind through step wells, water tanks, or rooftop catch basins. And planning a city or a town around a natural body of water is common. Does anyone remember having a road atlas in the glove compartment before smartphones or MapQuest was a thing? I remember having to update the atlas every year. But now that we have Google Maps or apps like Weiss, we can see traffic in real time and input any road activity ourselves. And that success of the app is often dependent on us. And these maps constantly change. But a map that changes less can be found using ArcGIS. As was discussed earlier, these maps provide information from the census, information from municipal or topographic data. It can give information like age, population, income, race, education, household value, layers of information that give us another side of the story. And it's important to map this kind of data to show policymakers and health professionals the relationship of things in that place. Is there a correlation of poor health of people living in an industrial plant? Why is this neighborhood getting hit harder by the pandemic? So these are just some questions that ArcGIS can provide maybe some answers to questions. But you know what GIS maps don't have? Your story. And so here are things that maybe a person does throughout a day. And if we think about our routine, our daily activities, it gives us clues to the things that matter to us. And if something is missing or presenting a challenge, we can map this and bring it to light to talk about. And this knowledge sharing and community-based participatory approach is sometimes called biomapping. And the things we do create a map of ourselves. And so we may just share one story at a time, but together, if you build upon the others and find common ground, locating needs, creating something bigger and more tangible, we can co-create this data, and our maps will tell a bit more of our story. So an example of a similar approach was piloted last year during CFI Summer Youth Program called Making a Difference, Mad Detroit. And we had 9 students who shared their ideas and challenges about a topic that they felt passionate about. And they came together to brainstorm, to research ways to make it better. And if a student knew about a certain topic relevant to the problem, they were in charge of that part. And after collaborating, they combined their efforts and built a larger map and said that this is how it should be. And we are working to develop a plan of action to make that happen. And we were so impressed by these high school students. And this is the site map, that 3D model that they end up creating. And so hopefully that this breakdown of collaborating can ease us into this map making process. Redistricting may seem intimidating, but who else knows our neighborhoods better than we do? And the more we zoom out on a map, the more details we lose, but that does not mean there's less data. And there's no recipe to mapping. As you can see from this presentation, it only gets richer if we are there to be part of the process. And that's why I love maps. So thank you for listening, and hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Andrea. I think even for me, like, maps seem a lot less intimidating when you think about it in terms of where you live, how you interact with different places and spaces. So I think that was really helpful. And for those of you who are interested in working on maps, we will have a series of exercises that will come up, especially once we get a little bit warmer weather and we can be outside. And Andrea and some other community partners will be helping us in those exercises. And our hope is that we'll be able to present a map to the commission and for consideration as we think about the communities of interest that we work with. So next on our agenda, we're going to learn about this term that we've heard a few times already today, gerrymandering. So we have a brief video that's going to tell us what the term means and where it came from. Okay. All right, well, our greatest fear just happened. You couldn't hear the video, but you could see it. So we're gonna try that again here. All right, we're gonna try that here again in just a second.
So, you want to know what gerrymandering is? First, let's start with Government 101. In the United States, each state elects a certain number of representatives based on the state's population. The larger your population, the more representatives you have. Each representative represents a district, or a geographical area including its voters. Ideally, we want to have a range of representatives who reflect the political views of the population across the state. But how do we decide who gets to vote for each representative? Let's look at an example. Suppose we have a very tiny state of 50 people. 30 of them belong to the blue party and 20 belong to the red party. And just our luck, they all live in a nice even grid with blues on one side of the state and reds on the other. Now, let's say we need to divide the state into 5 districts. Each district will send one representative to the House to represent the people. Fortunately, because our citizens live in a neatly ordered grid, it's easy to draw 5 lengthy districts, 2 for the reds and 3 for the blues. Voila! Perfectly proportional representation, just as the founders intended. Now, let's say instead that the blue party controls the state government, and they get to decide how the lines are drawn. Rather than draw districts horizontally, they draw them vertically, so that in each district there are 6 blues and 4 reds. With a comfortable blue majority in the state, each district elects a blue candidate to the House. The blues win 5 seats, and the reds don't get a single one. Oh well. Finally, what if the red party controls the state government? The reds know they're at a numerical disadvantage, but with some creative boundary drawing, they can slice the blue population up such that they only get a majority in 2 districts. So despite making up 40% of the population, the reds win 60% of the seats. Not bad. This process of redrawing district lines to give an advantage to one party over another is called gerrymandering, and it's nothing new. The term gerrymander is named after early 19th century Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry, who redrew the map of the Senate's districts in 1810 in order to weaken the opposing Federalist Party. Our example is, of course, a huge simplification. In the real world, people don't live in neatly ordered grids sorted by political party. But for politicians looking to give themselves an advantage at redistricting time, the process is exactly the same, and the consequences are very real. Gerrymandering is at least partly to blame for lopsided representation in the House seen in recent elections. And, it's been argued by the president, for political polarization, since representatives don't have to compromise hardline views in order to win seats.
So hopefully that quick video gave a better understanding of how gerrymandering can work and why it's important for us to be actively involved in how the lines are drawn. In some instances, it's even the lines don't even make sense, right? So the lines were really crooked. They were really narrow districts. And so that's just something that we need to be aware of and be mindful of, that gerrymandering exists. And the Citizens Redistricting Commission was created to try and avoid some of that. So we're going to hear from two representatives of the commission. We have them with us. Thank you both for being with us tonight. Greatly appreciate your time and also for dedicating yourself to this effort. I have been in attendance at some of the meetings virtually, and sometimes they can be lengthy. So it takes a lot of effort and commitment on your behalf to see things through. So we thank you for your service. And so we're going to start off with Commissioner Weiss, who's going to just talk about what the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission is.
Good evening. I'm Commissioner Richard Weiss, and I would like to thank Communities First for the opportunity to present a small presentation to you. What is the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission? The MICRC is responsible for drawing the district lines for the Michigan Congressional, House, and Senate. The MICRC is the only entity in the state that is authorized to draw and adopt redistricting plans for the state of Michigan. Randomly selected from over 9,000 applicants, the MICRC is comprised of 13 citizens from across the state of Michigan. They include 4 people who are affiliated with the Democratic Party, 5 independents who do not affiliate with either major party, and 4 who affiliate with the Republican Party. The members of the inaugural MICRC are Commissioner Douglas Clark, retired Operations Development Manager, Commissioner Juanita Curry, retired Specialist Foster Care Worker, Commissioner Anthony Eade, medical student, Commissioner Ron DeLange, a real estate broker, Commissioner Steve Letts, semi-retired lawyer, Commissioner Brittany Kellum, entrepreneur and trauma practitioner, Commissioner Cynthia Orton, college student, Commissioner M.C. Rothorn, financial cooperator, Commissioner Rebecca Zatella, lawyer, Commissioner Janice Vallette, retired banker, Commissioner Aaron Wagner, household engineer, Commissioner Richard Weiss, retired auto worker and handyman, and Commissioner Dustin Widget, payroll specialist. The inaugural MIC staff includes Executive Director Susan Hammersmith, General Counsel Julianne Pastula, and Communications and Outreach Director Edward Woods III.
Thank you for letting us know who is present on the commission. I think that's really important. And I heard you say that there were 9,000 applicants. So I think that just goes to show that there was great interest in participation. And I think we can also appreciate that it was, a lottery system. So, that helps us to believe that it's a fair process and that everybody had an equal opportunity to serve on the commission. So we're going to hear from Commissioner Zatella, who is also the vice chair of the commission. And she's going to talk about what the work of the commission has been to date, as well as some of their accomplishments.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we've been quite busy. We've been having meetings since October. And in that time period, the first thing we set out to do was to develop some rules and procedures for the commission to assist us in our work. We established rules of procedure and also a code of conduct for us to guide us in the work that we're doing. We put out some requests for proposals for both a line mapping vendor and a voter rights attorney. And through a transparent process, we conducted interviews for those positions, and we have approved the hiring of both a vendor to assist us with the line mapping, both in terms of the technical expertise and both the software that we're going to need to assist us in doing that. And then we've also approved the hiring of a very experienced voters rights attorney to help us with compliance with the Voters' Rights Act. In addition, we've attended quite a bit of professional development to learn about redistricting. Because we were randomly selected and just sort of tapped from all different walks of life within Michigan, we're not experts in redistricting. We're not experts in drawing maps. And so we've attended quite a bit of professional development to help us understand what the job is ahead of us so that we can do it in an effective and efficient manner. And the last thing, and Mariana touched on this a bit, there is going to be a delay in the census data that we're going to be receiving, and that is going to impact our ability to meet the deadlines that are laid out for us in the Constitution in terms of when we have to have our maps done. So in order to address that delay and how it will impact our ability to get our maps done, we have authorized our general counsel to actually go before the Michigan Supreme Court and request guidance and some additional time for us to complete our maps so that we are still compliant with our requirements.
Thank you for that. And then I think we're going to also have Commissioner Weiss just share how can the public help you to be effective in your work?
Well, first, your family and friends to learn more about Michigan new redistricting process to the website, www.michigan.gov/MICRC. 2, promote and attend, watch the MICRC meetings and or public hearings across the state of Michigan. 3, submit public comments and or proposed redistricting maps for the Michigan Congressional, Senate, and House districts to the MICRC. 4, collaborate and host a town hall forum to provide information about the redistricting process with local community organizers. And for more information about redistricting or to sign up and receive alerts, please visit www.michigan.gov/MICRC. And if you have any questions or need any additional information, you can please call our communication director, Mr. Woods, at 517-331-6309.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. So there are lots of ways to be involved, lots of ways to be connected. Communities First has even held a watch party where we invited our social media followers to engage. And we just picked one of the meetings and said, hey, everybody, tune in, let's watch together, and send any questions that you might have to us, and we will help to get them answered. And so some of those questions actually help to form what we discussed and talked about today. So somebody asked, what is gerrymandering? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is. And so therefore, we wanted to present that video. And so next up on our, and again, thank you to the commissioners for being with us. I don't know if I would have wanted to be one of the 9,000 who applied and had to go through the process, but it sounds like there is a committed group of individuals who is dedicated to this effort. And like I said, I've had a chance to watch some of the meetings, and it's not easy to tell who identifies with which party or anything like that, because it's very clear that you are there for a common goal and that you're keeping that at the forefront. So that was really encouraging to see when I took a look. So last on our agenda, we have a video that we're going to show you. And the video is of Dr. Joe Reed, who is the chair of the Alabama Democratic Conference. And this is an excerpt from our African American film series where we showed the film Good Trouble, and based on John Lewis's life. And so Dr. Reed has been involved in politics, it seems like his entire life. I'm not exactly sure how many years, but has been involved in redistricting in Alabama. And so I want everybody to hear his words and what his thoughts are about redistricting, because they were very profound. And I think the video cuts off before I went back into moderating. And there's this long delay if you watch the whole video, because I really didn't know what to say after he got done. But it was really helpful and reiterated for us the importance of redistricting.
Thank you. So what I found in my involvement in drawing district lines, when Montgomery went from mayor council form of government, from a commission form of government to a mayor council form of government, the district lines were drawn by some people at the University of Alabama, and there will be 9 city council members. They drew 2 majority black city council districts. And when I looked at that, and some others looked at it, I wasn't the only one. We had a meeting to strategize, if you will, please. And we talked about that. These lines are drawn to cut us out. We're about nearly 40% of the population. We're going to get only 2 districts. So I went into court. But then in the meantime, I also came home and got my little adding machine and started picking out my own. Then I started drawing my own plan. That's what I'm headed for. You can't let other folks do it for you. You have to do it yourself. I drew the plan. When the deal went down, when I finished, we didn't have 2. We had 4. We had 4 out of 9. And right now, the next time around, we're going to have 5 or 6 out of 9. But be prepared to draw your own plan. You can't rely on other folks to do it for you, because as long as they are drawing them, they're going to draw you out. If you draw your plan, you draw yourself in. That's so important, because that's where the representation comes. That's where the representation comes. I ran for the legislature in 1970. Didn't realize that the district line was drawn, so I couldn't win. That's when I started drawing my own line. And consequently, I started drawing for the whole state of Alabama. So we went from just a few blacks in the legislature, and Alabama is the only state in the nation where the population in the legislature reflects. We got 20, Alabama's about 26% black, and we got 26% of the House members black, and we also have the same thing in the Senate. Want to make it draw your own plan, because he who draws the plan or she who draws the plan will draw it to fit them and their interest. My interest was black folk. I don't apologize for it. Mine was very simple. I don't apologize for it. And so I drew district lines so blacks have equity. And I didn't try to take all of them, but I got my fair share. And it passed, the legislation passed the courts, and we have that right now. So the key to reapportionment is to draw your own plan. And if you don't draw one, get you somebody around you who can help you, but you draw those district lines yourself. That's the only thing I can tell you to do about reapportionment, because they're going to shut you out every time if you don't draw it yourself.
And so the thing that I think we can learn from what Dr. Reed had to say is, when we're talking about these different communities of interest, obviously African Americans would be one community of interest, but the same sort of sentiment could be applied to so many different types of communities of interest. And wanting to make sure that there is fair and equal representation, that there is equity in the process. And, what he said was, African Americans were 40% of the population, but the way the lines were drawn, there wasn't going to be that fair and equitable representation. And so he took action along with some other folks, and they did something about that. And I think, as I said, we can broaden that to go beyond just race. There's so many other ways that people identify in terms of economics, in terms of, their shared history, their location. And we need to keep all of those in mind. So what that sounds like to me is that the commission has a very difficult job at hand, because I think that there are going to be competing priorities and by different groups of people. But it sounds like they're up for the challenge, and they have lots of resources available to them to assist. So I just want to give an opportunity before we conclude today to allow anyone who's on the panel to speak if they have any final parting words, anything that they want to encourage and inspire people with.
Well, Essence, I'll say something if no one else is prepared. I just want to thank you for having this, thank the commissioners for their work, and thank the folks that have tuned in, because the more we have people involved, the more we have people understanding the process, the better informed they'll be when they vote next year. And the more input we have in these maps in the beginning process, the easier it is for the commissioners to make sure they draw maps that really reflect the best interests of the state of Michigan. And then when we have elections next year, the best people will win. the best people to reflect the community. And I think that's something that we should all want. So thank you for doing this, and look to see more of these in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us.
I was going to add that the most important thing from the commissioner's perspective right now is that we really do want people to give us comments and provide us with feedback. There's just 13 of us. Obviously, we don't know or represent every single nook and cranny within Michigan. People who live in communities know their communities, and they know where lines should be drawn and where the communities of interest are. And we're really counting on people providing us with that feedback and that information so that we can do a better job. So we really do need community involvement and engagement as much as possible. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Mariana, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I was talking here, but my microphone, so apologies. So I would say participate. If you can draw a map, that's great, but there are other ways to provide feedback to the commission. They need to hear from you, so participate. That's essentially what I needed to say.
Right, and Congressman Kildee, you sat up in your chair. I think you want to say something.
No, I just wanted to thank you for doing this, and again reiterate that, you know, the citizens made the decision to create this commission. I believe it was the right decision, but it's not a decision that they can just make and then leave it alone. It, I think, anticipated that citizens would continue to be engaged, that the representation that they have on the commission is simply an extension of all 10 million people in this state. And everybody has an obligation to have their voice heard. And as the two commissioners have said, there's a way for them to do that. And, you know, Jim and I shouldn't have any more influence over this than anyone else does. Probably ought to have less. And I think that's the way it ought to be. No matter what that means for any individual, it shouldn't matter. It really means a better, more democratic system in our state. And I'm really happy to see this moving forward. So thank you all.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Weiss, I want to go back to you for just a quick second. Can you share with us again those ways that people can be involved? There were just a couple of folks in the comments that just wanted to be reminded of how they can participate in the process. And then as a follow-up to this on social media and also through email, we'll certainly provide very specific ways that people can engage and continue to learn more. But I would like you to share those again if you could.
Yes, I would like to. One of the ways is go to www.michigan.gov/MICRC. That will get you into a lot of information about meetings and all of the public meetings that will be held. Let me see here. I got my other sheet here. And the other one is to visit www.michigan.gov/MICRC. And I guess the other thing would be to have as many individuals to watch our meetings on Thursday so they can see what we're doing and what our process is to get our lines drawn for the public in our districts. So, thank you. Yes.
I would add to that we have meetings every Thursday. They vary between whether they start at 9 in the morning or sometimes they start at 12:30 or 1. So they sort of alternate every other weekend. And any member of the public can sign up to make public comments during that meeting. So you just have to go to our webpage that Richard had indicated, and you can sign up to give public comment, and you will be given an opportunity to come to our meetings and have 2 minutes to say what's on your mind about redistricting. And we encourage people to do that.
All right, great. And someone asked what time are the meetings, and they're every Thursday, but they fluctuate between 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. start. So you can definitely go to the website, and there is a full list of those meetings, as well as information about the upcoming listening session that will be held in Flint. And I believe that's on June 1st, if I have the date correct. And then there are also some Detroit dates. And so we'll make sure that those get out via social media as well so that people can participate. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's participated on the panel. We greatly appreciate your feedback, and it has been well received. So some of those comments are coming up on the screen just so that you guys know that the information that you provided was helpful, and it made it easier for people to understand what's happening, what does redistricting mean, What is this new commission that we voted on? I don't even remember doing that 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So bringing that back to the forefront for people and giving them some tangible ways to be involved and be engaged in the process. So, and this was an interesting comment that, we're all paying taxes, we're all involved, and, we want our politicians to represent all people, not some of the people. So I think that's a great reminder for everyone. And I think, we would all agree with that sentiment. So again, thank you all for participating. Thank you everyone for listening. Even at this point, you can still share the video. It will be ready in just a few minutes. And so you can share that with people that you think might be interested. So at this point, we're going to say thanks again and have a great evening, everyone.